Welcome to another episode of our channel. In this video, we will talk about letters sent by dictator Nicolas Maduro to Putin and Xi Jinping, asking for weapons, ammunition, and radars to protect himself from what he sees as an imminent attack by the United States to overthrow his regime. Internal United States documents reveal that Maduro sent letters to Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping, requesting, urgently, military and logistical support in the face of the increasingly imminent threat of an American attack, aiming to overthrow him from power. According to available information, the letter to Putin requests help to renew Venezuela's air and air defense capabilities. And among the requests are the restoration of Sukhoi Su-30 Mk-2 aircraft, the shipment of missiles, mainly anti-ship and radars. Additionally, Maduro asked for a medium-term financing plan with Rostec, the Russian defense conglomerate, for the acquisition of new weapons. Maduro also turned to China's Xi Jinping, another major defense supplier to Venezuela, seeking to expand military cooperation between the two countries, mainly in the radar area. The goal would be to face the increasing escalation of tensions with the United States, knowing that if he can count on the support of Russia and China, he may have more chances to resist external pressures and maintain his regime in power. The relationship between Venezuela and Russia began in the times of Hugo Chavez, who, given the estrangement from the United States, initiated a process of massive purchases of Russian armaments, such as armored helicopters and Sukhoi fighters, with the result being the almost complete Russification of the Venezuelan armed forces that operate today, mostly Soviet-designed and Russian-made equipment, vehicles, and aircraft. However, Russian support, although solid, has been questioned in recent years, with many of the purchased equipment already obsolete or not operational, and Russia, despite its presence, has shown less willingness to invest in the country given the current political scenario and the ongoing war in Ukraine. In fact, from a long series of promised investments years ago, only a munition factory for Kalashnikov rifles was built in Venezuela. Another crucial point is the economy, with Venezuela, largely dependent on oil exports, facing serious challenges due to sanctions imposed by the United States. Russia, which also suffers from Western sanctions, has been trying to strengthen its ties with the Venezuelan regime, mainly in the oil and gas area. But with the new American sanctions against Russian oil companies recently announced by Trump, and with Europe tightening even more the sanctions against the clandestine Russian tanker fleet, known as the Ghost Fleet, this rapprochement has been further hampered, limiting many financing options for Maduro's regime. Not even Iran, another heavily sanctioned regime, and which in the recent past formed large partnerships with Maduro in the oil area, has been able to advance these partnerships, largely due to the war with Israel and the reinforcement of international sanctions. But economic cooperation is not enough to guarantee a solid military alliance, and Russia, with its attention focused on its war in Ukraine, has very limited resources to offer assistance to Venezuela, leaving a crucial question hanging. To what extent will Moscow be willing to engage in a new international crisis, especially when its own forces are so overburdened? This reminds us of the case of Iran, which made a similar plea for help to the Kremlin shortly before the 12-day war with Israel. At that time, Iran, fearing military actions against its nuclear facilities, sought Russia in search of strategic and material support, mainly in the form of air defense systems and advanced technology to strengthen its ability to deter possible aerial attacks, with both countries signing a broad strategic partnership in the Kremlin that provided for military support in the event of an attack. But despite the signing of this pact, Russian capabilities were overburdened due to sanctions and the war in Ukraine, and even with Iran geographically very close to Russia, the assistance requested by the Iranian regime did not materialize, making it clear that Putin does not have surplus military resources to support allies he considers strategic. Therefore, if Russia could not meet a request for help so close, How can it now meet Venezuela's, which is located on the other side of the world, in the Caribbean? The geographical distance, logistical challenges, and the overload of Russian forces, which are committed on several fronts, make this assistance very unlikely. And although, from time to time, we see Russian cargo planes landing in Caracas, the flow is not large enough to guarantee the means Maduro needs. Venezuela has significant strategic value for Moscow, not only because of its geographical position, but also because of its natural resources, with Venezuela's vast oil and gas reserves being of great interest to Putin. However, for all the reasons highlighted here, it seems very unlikely that all the items requested by Maduro will actually be delivered on time. On the other hand, China sees in Venezuela a great opportunity to expand its influence in Latin America. The partnership with Beijing is mainly focused on infrastructure agreements and long-term investments, but also with a strong presence in defense, mainly in the form of long-range radars, essential for defense against aerial attacks. What becomes very evident from these letters is Maduro's desperate attempt to preserve his position in power, seeking all possible support from traditional allies. But Russia, with its own internal problems and the growing need to prioritize its invasion of Ukraine, does not have the resources available to help a distant ally, as became very evident by not being able to support Iran. Xi Jinping, on his side, has no great interest now in attracting Trump's ire, especially in the current phase of rapprochement and truce in the trade war between the two countries. With all this seeming to indicate that Maduro, despite his desperate requests for help, will not have everything he needs to ensure the survival of his regime if the United States really decides to proceed with attacks aiming at his downfall. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now and activate the notification bell to not miss any news.